The email did not look like the beginning of a global cyber attack. It looked like work, a reply inside an existing conversation, an invoice, a shipping notice, a Microsoft Word document waiting to be opened. The sender appeared familiar because the message could contain language taken from a real email chain. The subject made sense. The attachment used a file type exchanged in offices every day. Then the document asked the recipient to enable content. That small instruction was the door. Hidden code could run. A second file could be downloaded. The computer could begin communicating with an infrastructure controlled by criminals. What entered through the document was Emotet, a family of malware that evolved from a banking Trojan into one of the most important access systems in cybercrime. The attachment was not the final weapon. It was the first key. Once Emotet entered a machine, it could steal information, spread through a network, and deliver additional malware. In some cases, the next payload could steal financial credentials. In others, it could help prepare the ground for ransomware. By January 2021, the United States Justice Department said Emotet had infected more than 1.6 million victim computers and caused hundreds of millions of dollars in damage worldwide. All of that scale could begin with an object designed to disappear into an ordinary workday. Emotet first emerged in 2014 as a banking Trojan. A banking Trojan is malware designed to steal information associated with financial activity, such as credentials or account data. But Emotet did not remain limited to that role. Over time, it became modular. Instead of performing one fixed function, the malware could receive new capabilities and deliver other criminal tools. Its operators developed infrastructure for distributing the initial infection, controlling compromised machines, stealing information, and opening access for other groups. Europol later described Emotet as a primary door opener. That description explains the business. A criminal planning a ransomware attack needs access before encryption can begin. Someone must enter a machine, establish a foothold, learn the environment, obtain credentials, move toward valuable systems, and deliver the final payload. Emotet could provide the first stages. The operators did not need every victim computer to hold money directly. Access itself had value. A hospital computer could lead toward a healthcare network. A government workstation could expose public systems. A business laptop could contain email conversations, passwords, customer information, and pathways to shared resources. The infected device became inventory inside an underground service. The difficult part was getting the first code to run. Email solved the delivery problem, because organizations cannot simply stop receiving messages and documents. Businesses depend on invoices. Employees exchange reports. Shipping notices arrive without warning. Colleagues send attachments. Customers reply to old conversations. Security systems can block obvious executable files, but a Word document belongs inside normal workflow. That familiarity created cover. Emotet campaigns used spam emails containing malicious attachments or hyperlinks. The messages could appear to come from legitimate sources or someone in the recipient's contacts. Lures included invoices, shipping information, and material connected to COVID-19. The document itself could contain hidden macros. Macros are instructions that automate actions inside Office software. In legitimate use, they can format data, perform calculations, or repeat a task. In malicious use, they can invoke scripts that reach outside the document and download code. The attacker still needed the user to cross a boundary. Office software could display a warning and keep active content disabled. The document therefore prompted the recipient to enable macros or enable content, often presenting the action as necessary to view what appeared to be a protected or incomplete file. The warning was real. The explanation around it was the deception. This made the attack a partnership between code and psychology. The malware could not persuade the employee by itself. The email supplied context. The document supplied urgency. The interface supplied a button. The user supplied execution. Emotet made that persuasion more convincing through thread hijacking. After infecting a computer, the malware could steal email information. Criminals could then reply inside an existing conversation while spoofing an identity and adding a malicious document. The recipient recognized the people and topic. The conversation above the new reply was real. Only the latest attachment had changed. This defeated one of the most common pieces of security advice: be suspicious of messages from strangers. The message did not appear to come from a stranger. It borrowed trust accumulated by real people over earlier emails. A supplier had already discussed an order. A colleague had already shared a project. A customer had already asked a question. The malicious reply inherited all of that context. The overlooked condition was simple. A real conversation does not guarantee that every new message in it is authentic. Identity in email is not permanent. An infected account, stolen contact list, or spoofed sender can allow an attacker to wear the shape of a trusted relationship. When the recipient opened the document and enabled its macros, hidden code could launch a script and retrieve the Emotet payload from a distribution server. The file on the screen might appear blank, corrupted, or protected. Behind it, the computer had begun a different conversation. It reached toward command and control infrastructure. That infrastructure told infected machines what to do. Emotet could collect system information, retrieve additional modules, steal credentials, scrape email data, and attempt to move through a network. Tadshisa documented worm-like capabilities that made network-wide infection difficult to contain. The malware could try passwords against local accounts. It could use administrative shares and remote services. It could establish persistence so that restarting the computer did not necessarily remove it. The initial document disappeared into a much larger system. This is where the scale problem began. One successful phishing email produces one foothold. A global criminal service requires distribution servers, command systems, update mechanisms, stolen infrastructure, and a constant flow of new victims. Emotet's operators used compromised web servers to distribute malware. According to the Justice Department, many of those servers appeared to belong to unaware third parties. That created layers of victims. The person opening the attachment was a victim. The organization whose network was entered was a victim. The owner of a compromised server used to distribute Emotet was also a victim. Each layer helped conceal the operators behind infrastructure that did not carry their legal names. The botnet grew by turning other people's machines into parts of the service. Its modular design created flexibility. New capabilities could be added. Different secondary malware could be delivered. If defenders learned one technique, the campaign could adjust lures, attachment formats, scripts, or network behavior. In 2020, CISA and the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center warned that Emotet had become one of the most prevalent ongoing threats. State and local governments were among the targets. CISA's Federal Intrusion Detection System recorded roughly 16,000 alerts related to Emotet activity during the period described in its advisory. The campaign also adapted to the moment. COVID-19 became an email lure because recipients were already searching for urgent information. Password-protected archive files helped bypass some scanning systems. Messages could claim that documents were created on mobile devices and required macros to display correctly. The visual details changed. The human action remained the same. Open, enable, trust. If you want more investigations into the ordinary objects that open hidden digital empires, subscribe to AUVEN. We follow the evidence beneath the surface, where one familiar file can become the first stage of an attack. Emotet's apparent victory was not a single dramatic breach. It was repetition at industrial scale. An employee clicked. A machine joined. Stolen email context made the next message more credible. Additional malware increased the value of access. The botnet expanded across sectors that included banking, e-commerce, healthcare, academia, government, and technology. The service separated the first compromise from the final damage. That separation made responsibility harder to see. The user remembered a Word document. The incident responder found credential theft. The organization later faced ransomware. The criminal who delivered the final payload might not be the same actor who sent the original email. Cybercrime had become a supply chain. Emotet occupied the doorway. The economics of that doorway explain why a loader could become more valuable than a single-purpose virus. Stealing one password produces one opportunity. Maintaining repeatable access produces a market. An infected machine can be evaluated by geography, organization, privileges, connectivity, or the data available to its user. Access to a small personal computer may be worth little to one criminal group. Access inside a large company, hospital, or public agency may be valuable to several. The operator of a loader does not need to exploit every opportunity personally. It can supply the opening. Other actors can specialize in credential theft, financial fraud, reconnaissance, or extortion. The final criminal may arrive long after the document is forgotten. This delay weakens the victim's understanding of cause and effect. If ransomware appears on Tuesday, employees may search for something unusual that happened on Monday. The first malicious attachment may have been opened days or weeks earlier. During that time, credentials could be collected, email examined, and access expanded. The visible crisis is the end of the preparation. The harmless-looking file belongs to the beginning. That timeline also benefits the attacker during incident response. Organizations naturally focus on the loudest symptom, encrypted files, unavailable servers, or a ransom note. If they restore systems without finding the earlier access path, the intruder may retain a way back. Emotet's role as a downloader, therefore, changed what defenders had to ask. Not only, what did this malware do, but what else did it bring? Not only, which computer opened the file, but which accounts and shared systems did that computer reach afterward? Not only, is the attachment deleted, but does the command channel still exist? The first stage malware turns every answer into another question. This is why the damage attributed to Emotet cannot be understood as the cost of replacing infected laptops. The larger cost included business interruption, investigation, recovery, stolen information, and harm caused by secondary payloads that used the access it created. The file was cheap. The uncertainty was expensive. An organization could not safely assume the infection stopped where it was first seen. It had to prove the negative across accounts, machines, and time. That role also created the final weakness. To control a botnet, operators need infrastructure that infected machines know how to reach. The computers must receive instructions and updates. Distribution servers must supply files. Command systems must maintain the connection between the malware and the people profiting from it. The same infrastructure that gives a botnet coherence gives investigators something to target. By late January 2021, law enforcement and judicial authorities in multiple countries had coordinated an operation against Emotet. Participants included the Netherlands, Germany, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Lithuania, Canada, and Ukraine, with Europol and Eurojust supporting the action. Officials in other countries also assisted. Investigators did not attempt to clean 1.6 million computers one by one. They went after the systems those computers depended on. The FBI gained lawful access to an Emotet distribution server located outside the United States. Investigators identified servers around the world used to distribute the malware. U.S. authorities notified more than 20 domestic hosting providers that they hosted more than 45 IP addresses compromised in connection with Emotet. FBI legal attachés also notified authorities in more than 50 countries about hundreds of compromised IP addresses in their jurisdictions. The response had to match the architecture. A botnet crosses borders automatically. Legal authority does not. One server may be in a country where investigators can act. Another may belong to an innocent company elsewhere. An infected computer may sit inside a hospital, an office, or a home in a third jurisdiction. Technical control without legal coordination would leave gaps. Legal coordination without technical understanding would move too slowly. The operation brought both together. Authorities gained control of key Emotet infrastructure and redirected infected systems toward servers controlled by law enforcement. In the United States, investigators placed a file on an Emotet distribution server with the intention that infected computers would download it through an update process already programmed into the malware. This was a reversal of the botnet's own design. For years, Emotet's update mechanism allowed operators to change what infected machines received. Now investigators used that dependency to disrupt the connection. The malware had treated every infected computer as a remote asset. Control of the infrastructure allowed law enforcement to issue the next instruction. The technique was powerful, but the public record sets boundaries around what it proved. The January action disrupted Emotet's infrastructure at that time. It did not make phishing disappear. It did not guarantee that every infected computer was repaired. It did not erase stolen data or undo downstream harm. Later activity associated with Emotet also showed why cybercrime cannot always be described as permanently defeated by one operation. Disruption is still meaningful. It breaks continuity. It forces operators to rebuild. It separates infected machines from familiar command systems. It exposes infrastructure and methods. It gives defenders time. For a service built on reliable access, interrupted reliability damages the product. The operation also revealed the asymmetry between the first click and the final response. One person could open the document in seconds. Stopping the resulting network required years of technical investigation, judicial orders, server access, hosting provider notifications, international coordination, and action across multiple countries. The attacker concentrated effort at the beginning. The defenders had to distribute effort across the entire chain. That is why prevention focuses so heavily on the attachment. Once the payload runs, the problem changes category. The security team must identify affected machines, isolate systems, preserve evidence, reset compromised credentials, inspect lateral movement, block command traffic, assess stolen email, and determine whether additional malware arrived. Removing one visible file may leave persistence behind. Resetting one password may not address credentials stolen elsewhere. Cleaning one computer may not remove the infection from shared resources. The ordinary document is the cheapest point to stop the process. Yet blaming the recipient alone misunderstands the attack. People make decisions with the context available in seconds. They cannot reverse engineer every attachment before opening it, especially when their job requires documents to move quickly. The attackers exploited that operational reality. Training can help a recipient recognize unusual prompts, unexpected archives, or requests to enable macros. It cannot carry the entire defense. If an organization depends on every employee making a perfect decision forever, one convincing message can defeat the model. Resilience comes from assuming someone will eventually click. The question then becomes whether that click can execute code, obtain privileges, reach other machines, contact known malicious infrastructure, steal reusable credentials, and remain unnoticed. Layered security reduces the distance between the mistake and detection. Emotet campaigns were designed to make safe behavior difficult. The message could arrive from a familiar name. The email chain could be authentic. The attachment type could be normal. The request could resemble everyday work. Security depended not only on perfect human suspicion, but on layered controls. Email filtering could block or scan suspicious attachments. Macros could be restricted. Users could operate without unnecessary administrative privileges. Networks could be segmented, so one infected computer could not easily reach everything. Multi-factor authentication could reduce the value of stolen passwords. Monitoring could identify unusual command traffic. Backups and incident plans could reduce the leverage of downstream ransomware. No single layer was perfect. The goal was to prevent one human decision from becoming a network-wide catastrophe. This returns to the central deception inside the file. The document did not need to look technically convincing. It needed to look socially expected. An invoice belongs in accounting. A shipping notice belongs in logistics. A reply belongs inside a conversation. A pandemic update belongs in an anxious year. Emotet hid malicious computation inside legitimate routine. The routine did most of the camouflage. At the beginning, the user saw a Word file and believed the computer was waiting for instructions about how to display it. The opposite was true. The hidden code was waiting for instructions from somewhere else. The document was only the handoff. Behind it stood distribution servers, command systems, stolen email threads, compromised websites, criminal customers, and more than 1 million infected machines. An object measured in kilobytes opened a system measured across countries. That was Emotet's power. It made the entrance smaller than the consequence. And when investigators finally reached the infrastructure, they used the malware's greatest strength against it. The update mechanism that had turned infected computers into a service became the channel through which control was taken away. The ordinary file had opened the door. The global botnet had kept it open. Then, in January 2021, someone else reached the handle. Globally,